even back when we were doing principal photography, there was this aura about Return of the King that was quite special. I mean, I remember it back when we were first doing elements of that film. I mean, obviously we were skipping around quite a lot, but whenever it came to doing something from film 3, there was this kind of excitement, and there was something special about it. And Pete acknowledged that as well. Pete was always quite enamored with that particular part of the story. It was always his favorite, and he kind of approached it with even more gusto than the other 3. It's highly emotional, very powerful, and these characters that, it's a massive payoff, because these characters that you've watched over the course of 2 films on their journey have to go to the ends of their abilities. And you know, so much is invested in these characters at this point that it's going to be pretty extraordinary to watch what happens to these characters and to see some resolution. And I think the resolution in and of itself is also pretty extraordinary. I think over the course of the 3 films and all of the principal photography, the thing that struck me most about Peter was his ability to maintain first his energy and his enthusiasm, as well as his ability to never lose sight of where these films were going, and he always had everything very straight in his head. I was 18 when I came to New Zealand. I'm 22 now. I feel older and hopefully wiser and stronger and all of these things. It's difficult to articulate how I've changed. I think other people would have a greater perspective on that than I would. I definitely feel different. I don't know. I mean, I have so much more in my life now as a result of working on these movies. You know, I have that family that will be with me for the rest of my life. I have that incredible connection to New Zealand that I will always carry with me. Frodo, as a result of taking the ring to Mordor and having it destroyed, will never be the same. He will always have those experiences with him for the rest of his life, be they positive or negative. And in the same way, it's the same for me. Frodo had the sort of burden and the responsibility of carrying this ring, and I had the burden and responsibility of seeing this character through, which was, at the time, quite scary, because it's a very beloved character that, you know, thousands, millions of people know and love. And if I'd gotten it wrong, that would have been a great tragedy, and I certainly didn't want to get it wrong. And that I definitely felt the weight of that responsibility.
Gandalf has an overview of the situation on Middle-earth and accepts, whether it's his own idea or one that's been given to him as part of his task of renewing the fortunes of the good forces in Middle-earth, I don't know, that Aragorn should come back from his not misspent youth, but his time away from the duties of responsibility and kingship by becoming a king, which is his heritage, and Gandalf would say his destiny. Peter Jackson has amazing energy and determination and willpower and self-confidence and charm and ability to talk you into doing anything. And will work all hours that have been sent to him to achieve his ends. He'd be a great guy to go into battle with. I don't think much would go wrong if Peter was in charge. The genre may be fantastic, but these are real, living beings, not human. So well, it's a story. But they're as close to humans as you could possibly want them to be. And of course Tolkien is commenting on a side of human nature when he creates the hobbits. They are a certain sort of person. But then so are elves. And so, let's face it, they're wizards. And there should be a few more wizards in the world. But I think the story goes on being relevant, not necessarily because of its subject matter, but simply because of the brilliance with which it's told. And Peter Jackson's film is also the work of a brilliant storyteller himself. And that's why these films have been as popular as the books have been and continue to be. Gandalf's on a human scale, and all the characters can be seen in that way, whether they have magical powers or not. They are reflecting back on our experience of being human. But these are extraordinary times that Gandalf and the rest are living through, and extraordinary demands are made on people's spirit, and everyone is being measured.
It's sort of every girl's dream to be a princess of some kind. But I never really saw it in that way. I didn't ever really think about it as, oh, I'm a princess. I just sort of felt like, I think the hardest things for me about portraying Arwen were the elven characteristics, and really trying to learn and understand how to take it all in, all these incredible traits that they have of being all-knowing, and they have all these powers, very keen eyesight and hearing, and they're incredibly kind and in touch with nature and in the world, and all these things are sort of these perfect beings, and then how to put that onto film. In the first two films, you really see her sort of setting herself up, and she says, you know, she wants to stand by him. She chooses immortal life. It's very romantic. And yet, I don't know that she necessarily really understands the consequences of that. And so in this film, in The Return of the King, you see her, I mean, deeply suffering, because she realizes finally what everybody's been trying to tell her, what her father's been trying to tell her, what Galadriel's been trying to tell her, that these consequences are enormous, and that I could die and he could die and we may not ever be together, and it's pain and suffering, and it's like this whole other universe. I would definitely be more irrational and neurotic than Arwen, and I mean, she's so selfless, and so I love playing it, and it feels great, but I don't think I could be that patient, and in my own time, I would be like, get your butt home now, or I'm out of here. No one is just good or bad. You see all sides of everyone. Everyone has, you know, like a full spectrum of colors to their personality, and that's what people are like. I hate it when I see movies and it's just sort of like, oh, one way, or because people aren't really like that, you know, at all. Nobody's really that sure or just sort of one way, and I think that Tolkien did a really beautiful job of showing that with all the characters. And I guess Gollum and Smeagol are a really good example of that, because he's horrible and you love him and you want to save him and protect him, and then it's so confusing, you know. To me, I think we live in this world now where everything has such a sort of polished image. I mean, every magazine is airbrushed, and you know, you have these beautiful models, for example, on the cover of magazines who are already perfect sort of alien beings, and then they're completely airbrushed and they look even more perfect, and it's even I can't relate to that, and I'm a part of that world, and I get insecure and feel weird about it. So when you see a film or read a book, or if you're touched by something and moved by something that's really human and that you really relate to, it just makes you feel like you're not alone, you know, like you exist in a world where other people feel like you feel. And I think that everybody can find a character in The Lord of the Rings that they relate to or feel for the most, if not one, many, you know.
The Return of the King refers to the return of a king to the kingdom of Gondor after many, many years without. The line of kings was thought to have died out a long time ago. And at the start of the trilogy, very, very few people, really only in Rivendell and then Gandalf, is it known that there is an heir, that there is one surviving heir in that line, and that is Aragorn. The thing that stands out the most for me about the relationship between Arwen and Aragorn is the fact that I believe they both feel that their union is more profound and long-lasting than their individual existences could ever be. They have each other in mind. Well, I think that any good leader has to have a healthy amount of self-doubt to rule effectively, to inspire people to follow him or her. You know, you lead by example. And if you're honest enough to admit that you're not always sure about everything, you know, that's a strength, not a weakness. 50 years from now, there'll be some special effects that may or may not seem dated. It won't really matter because the emotional through line, the truthfulness, I think, of the interaction of the characters and the way that Peter has inspired everyone to commit to this story is what will last. And that's the thing that will continue to resonate. And I think that's also why people are interested in Tolkien's book. I think each of the actors asked as much or more from themselves than Peter asked from us, because, like the crew members, we were interested in the story we were telling. If you don't make an effort outside of the confines of your little life and your own concerns, if you don't make an effort to not only improve yourself, but improve the lot of others, or make an effort to reach out and understand other people, then life for us and for our world is, as Galadriel termed it, in terms of the Lord of the Rings, the long defeat, you know, just a sort of slow downward journey to death, really. I mean, there isn't anything else. You know, each individual, out of their own free will, has a choice to make life more than just that fall, you know. And I think that's what's at the heart of the book and the movies. That's what it's about. You can and ought to try to make a difference.
What hobbits represent are what's really at stake in the story. Being able to live in a world that's healthy and clean, where you have air to breathe and water to drink and food and friends and good fun. That's ultimately what's worth fighting for. So I think that's why the hobbits are considered the heart of the movie, because they represent that in the movie. We never leave the scene until it hit Peter just right. And not just right in his gut. He'd have to hit him right in his gut. He'd have to feel something when he was watching it. He'd have to believe it. And it would have to work for him aesthetically in terms of the camera moves that he was putting together. So it was a pretty rigorous technical and craftsman challenge, you know, to get those emotional moments right.
The relationship between Legolas and Gimli becomes more of a kind of, the way that they interact, it's just funny to see two completely opposite people. I mean, you know, they couldn't be more at different ends of the scale, you know what I mean? And it's kind of sweet to see them
befriend each other and then interact and try and find common ground in which to kind of have a friendship, you know. There was something incredibly special about working on it, on Lord of the Rings. There was something, it felt kind of like making, like you were making something that was part of history. And even when you were making it, so the importance and the importance that was placed on everything was so great that it sort of fueled this respect, this mutual respect amongst the people working on it, and this kind of sense of privilege. I think one of the most appealing things about The Lord of the Rings is that it's a human story. It's made up of all the same it's made up of all the same elements that are important in life. So friendship, loyalty, compassion, love, and you know, the fear and anger. It's kind of, it balances, it has an element of all of those qualities. I think the climax of a story is always the most fulfilling as an audience member. You know, I think when you sit in a seat, it's towards, you know, it's always at the end of a film that the tension gets raised to a point where it's almost unbearable, and the end is near, and everything needs to be resolved, and that's what you get in The Return of the King.
I think for Eowyn, she gets to see in this film what she's really made of. She's had a lot of passion and words and talk and high ideals. Now she'll get to really see what it is she wants and who she is and what she's capable of. Like, she's believed that she's capable of certain things and should be allowed to go to war and should be, you know, valued equally as a man. And in this film, she gets to face the terror of war. I think people love going and seeing the films because it's just a complete other world that they can dive into. And I think people love the purity of the characters. And I mean, that was what I was struck with most when I first went down to look at the footage, when I first went to work on it, was the basic humanity of the characters, you know.
In The Return of the King, we're presented with, at the beginning of the film, you think you know where you are with Gollum Smeagol, as we've seen them in the Two Towers. And without giving too much away, I can say that there are several flips and twists, and the sands shift within the character. So you're not quite sure. You may think you have a gauge on what's going on with him, but in fact, you know, the things aren't always what they seem to be with Gollum. Just generally, people have come up and said, God, that's me. That's absolutely me. And which is quite surprising, you know, for a CG character, essentially, to be able to have that impact. The essence of why I think, I may be so bold, why I think that Gollum works as a CG character is because Peter wanted performance, and he wanted actors acting off each other in the same environment, and that's the root of it. That is the root of it.
The Return of the King is the climax of the story, and in a sense, because it's a climax, it is the reason why you make the first two films. You know, you make the Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers because you want to get to the Return of the King. That's the whole point. And that's very much the spirit in which we've approached the film, that, you know, people who have watched the first two movies have stuck with us, and everybody's waiting now to get to the last one, including us, the filmmakers, and we had the most fun making this film because it's, it's climactic, it's paying everything off. We really didn't have to do a lot of hard slog setting things up because the first two films have done that for us. So we were able just to pay things off. It is the culmination of everything that we've set up. It's all the different storylines lead to this film. The journeys that the characters are taking leads to this film. This is really, in a sense, climactic from the beginning right the way through to the end. I think The Return of the King is the most emotional of the three. And that's important. It's always been important with these films that we've been making because no matter how much spectacle you put on the screen, no matter what the battles are and the visual effects are doing, there's a point where people just don't care about that anymore, and what they want is the human story, the story that we can relate to. We were finding actors to represent some of the most beloved characters in history, really, and this book has been read over the last 50 years by so many people, and I think everybody that's read the book has imagined their own face as Frodo or Gandalf or Aragorn or Arwen. They've just had these people in their minds, and so we felt that responsibility acutely, and we'd spent a lot of time trying to find people who just felt right, that we were literally said that we wanted our actors to feel like they stepped out of the pages of the book and just felt like they belonged in the film. Well, I think these films are truly timeless, and that's a term that's used a lot, but I think that the themes within them are themes that are as relevant 50 years ago when Tolkien wrote the book as they are today. They were relevant 500 years ago. It's basic human emotional stuff, if you like. It's friendship, it's courage, it's loyalty, it's love, it's fear, it's evil, it's good versus evil. There's nothing complicated about the themes. I mean, for all the complexity of the Lord of the Rings as a story, for all the multitude of characters and funny place names and things that you struggle to remember, what's at its essence is the most simple themic material possible, and I think that's why it touches people.
Return of the King really is the jewel in the crown. It's the most amazing film because it's as epic as the other two, and yet it wraps up the story. So there's a very emotional resolution to each and every character who we've grown to know and love throughout the telling of these stories, and their resolution is huge emotional impact. I think people will bring people to tears and also joy, both. Unquestionably, what separates Peter out and makes him among the best directors I've worked with is singleness of purpose and the very, very clear focus he has on what is essential to telling a story.
In some ways, it's an obvious thing to draw similarities or an analogy to the Fellowship of Middle-earth. But indeed, in some ways, this large group of people, the core crew that helped Peter bring Middle-earth to life in the form of these three films, has been on their own journey, leaving the Shire innocent in some ways, a little ignorant, not quite sure of what was out beyond the edge of the Shire, but really with confidence, journeying on, faith in each other, and really climbing to the peaks of Caradhras, to the depths of Moria. We've been through it all, but ultimately reaching the end of the journey where we finally can throw the ring into the crack of doom and then make our way back to the Shire to hopefully have some good ales and a cheery chat about the journey that's just passed. Through the art of the film, through the visual effects, the physical effects, the art department, so much effort has been put into trying to create Middle-earth as a character so that the audiences can understand why the small group of people would so vehemently and passionately fight to preserve what is good in the world of Middle-earth.